It all started on a lazy Sunday afternoon, with Jeff and Arthur lounging in their living room, the flicker of the television casting moving shadows across the walls. They were halfway through a Western film marathon, cowboys, outlaws, and dramatic duels under the scorching sun. Something about the rugged charm of the Old West, the sweeping landscapes, the bravado of the lone cowboy, and the thrill of the shootout. Something about it all struck a chord in his demonic heart. "Arthur," Jeff declared, his eyes alight with a new and alarming passion. "I've decided. I'm going to be a cowboy." Arthur, accustomed to Jeff's whims but always a bit cautious, eyed him warily. "You want to be a what now?" "A cowboy, Arthur. It's perfect. I already have the boots, sort of," Jeff said, gesturing to his flame-engraved demon boots, which were decidedly more gothic than Western. Arthur, who had learned never to underestimate Jeff's capacity for unexpected ideas, raised an eyebrow. "Jeff, do you even know the first thing about being a cowboy?" Undeterred, Jeff waved off Arthur's concern. "Of course," Jeff retorted, already scrolling through his phone for cowboy outfits. "It involves horses, hats, heroic deeds, and lassos." His pronunciation stumbled over the unfamiliar word, giving it a peculiar emphasis. The very next day, Jeff was determined to immerse himself in cowboy culture, starting with the attire. They ventured to a costume shop where Jeff pieced together an outfit that could only be described as theatrical. He chose a large, gaudy cowboy hat adorned with fiery patterns, boots with unnecessarily long, jangling spurs, and, most extravagantly, a bright red cape that he claimed was inspired by the cowboys of yore. "Jeff, cowboys don't wear capes," Arthur pointed out mildly as Jeff swished the cape dramatically in the store. "They would if they knew how majestic it looked," Jeff countered, admiring his reflection. Upon returning home, Jeff decided the best way to practice his cowboy skills was right in their neighborhood, much to Arthur's concern. Armed with a newly acquired lasso, Jeff attempted to wrangle everything in sight, from mailboxes to Mrs. Peterson's ornery cat, which did not take kindly to being lassoed and chased Jeff up a tree in a spectacular reversal of roles. His lasso tricks didn't stop there. Jeff managed to inadvertently loop his rope around a neighbor's bicycle, pulling it along behind him as he marched down the street, calling out, "Yee-haw! Get along, little doggy!" to the bemused and bewildered looks of their neighbors. The chaos reached a peak when Jeff tried to demonstrate a quick draw using a garden hose. The hose, turned on to full blast, whipped around wildly, dousing passersby and flooding the sidewalk. Jeff's shouts of, "I'm just watering the town like a true cowboy tends to his cattle," did little to appease the soaked pedestrians. After paying for several apologies in the form of replacing a ruined garden and treating the neighborhood to free car washes, courtesy of his mismanaged hose skills, Jeff decided it was time to take his cowboy aspirations to a more appropriate setting. With their bags hastily packed and Arthur's reservations in tow, they set off for Texas, the land of actual cowboys. As they drove towards a reputedly authentic dude ranch just outside of Dallas, Jeff practiced his cowboy drawl, mixing in demon slang, creating a dialect that Arthur was sure no one, human or demon, had ever heard before. Upon their arrival at the ranch, the sight of real cowboys, wide open spaces, and herds of cattle roaming the fields ignited a spark in Jeff's eyes. As he stepped out of the car, his cape fluttering dramatically in the Texas breeze, Jeff looked around, took a deep breath, and declared, "Now, this is where the adventure really begins, partner." Arthur, watching Jeff's cape catch the wind and his spurs glint in the setting sun, couldn't help but smile. Whatever chaos Jeff the Demon Cowboy was about to unleash in Texas, it was sure to be nothing short of legendary. The Texas sun blazed overhead as Jeff, adorned in his wildly inaccurate cowboy attire, prepared for a day full of authentic ranch activities. His enthusiasm was palpable, albeit tinged with the chaotic influence of his demonic nature, which he was all too eager to apply to the day's challenges. Their first activity was horseback riding, which provided the initial stage for Jeff's magical mishaps. Jeff approached a sturdy chestnut horse named Bullet, determined to impress the ranch staff with his demonic-enhanced riding skills. After a brief struggle involving an overly dramatic attempt to leap onto Bullet's back, which resulted only in a graceless flop over the saddle, Jeff decided to use a small enchantment to foster a deeper bond with the horse. Unfortunately, his spell backfired spectacularly, resulting in Bullet stubbornly deciding to walk backwards, much to the amusement of the onlooking ranch hands. "Maybe less magic and more actual riding, Jeff?" Arthur suggested, trying to suppress his laughter as he watched Jeff gently coax Bullet to move forward, only for the horse to sidestep every command with comedic obstinacy. Next up was the lasso lesson, which turned into a farcical display of Jeff's overconfidence in his magical abilities. Armed with his enchanted lasso, Jeff attempted to wrangle a dummy steer. However, his spell was a tad too strong, causing the rope to whip around wildly, latching onto everything but the intended target. It snagged a nearby watering can, a wheelbarrow, and at one unfortunate moment, it looped around Arthur, who found himself momentarily hoisted off the ground amidst a flurry of apologies from an increasingly red-faced Jeff. "Just aiming to keep you on your toes, Arthur," Jeff joked, finally managing to reel the lasso back with a sheepish grin. As the day progressed, they moved on to cattle herding, an activity that should have been straightforward, if not for Jeff's insistence on improving the process with a bit of demonic flair. He whispered a spell intended to make the cattle more cooperative. Instead, the cattle became curiously playful, chasing each other around the field in a bovine game of tag that left the ranch hands scrambling and Jeff shrugging apologetically. "Perhaps my talents are too advanced for mere cattle," Jeff mused aloud, watching as the ranch team finally corralled the last of the mischievous herd. Their final adventure of the day was a friendly roping competition among the guests. Jeff, eager to redeem himself, focused intently on the task at hand. This time, he abstained from using magic, relying solely on his newly acquired skills. His throw was perfect, the rope sailing through the air and landing neatly around the horns of the practice steer. The success earned him a round of applause, and Jeff bowed dramatically, his cape sweeping the dirt. "See, Arthur, I can be a cowboy without any magical enhancements." Jeff beamed, his chest puffing up with pride. As the day wound down to a close, the duo joined the other guests for a hearty cowboy dinner under the stars. The laughter and camaraderie around the campfire were infectious, and tales of the day's antics, particularly Jeff's, were shared with boisterous laughter. "Today I learned that being a cowboy is about more than just riding and roping," Jeff reflected, his voice tinged with humor and a hint of humility. "It's about embracing the spirit of the West, even if it means getting roped into your own lasso once or twice." Arthur clinked his tin cup against Jeff's. "To Jeff, the most entertaining cowboy I've ever met." The final day of their Texas adventure brought with it the anticipation of the local rodeo, where Jeff had boldly entered both of them into the novice competitions. The scent of sawdust and barbecue filled the air as crowds gathered around the arena, eager to witness the spectacle of cowboys and cowgirls showcasing their skills. "Arthur, today we go down in cowboy history," Jeff declared with a flourish, his cape billowing dramatically as he donned a ridiculously oversized cowboy hat that shaded not just his face, but half his torso. As the events began, Arthur found himself surprisingly swept up in the excitement, though his gaze frequently darted towards Jeff, whose antics had already become the stuff of legend among the locals. Their first event was barrel racing, which seemed simple enough. However, in true Jeff style, he couldn't resist adding his own flair to the proceedings. As Jeff approached the first barrel, he whispered a spell, hoping to give his horse an extra burst of speed. To the amusement of the spectators, the spell instead caused the horse to leap gracefully over the barrel like a show jumper, leaving Jeff clinging to its mane, his cape fluttering wildly. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, thoroughly entertained by the unexpected acrobatics. Maybe stick to the standard way, Jeff, Arthur shouted over the cheers. Next up was the team roping event. Jeff, brimming with confidence from their earlier escapades, decided to forego magic and rely purely on skill. Arthur, though nervous, found himself drawn into the competitive spirit. Together, they managed a surprisingly competent display, their lasso skills complementing each other perfectly. Their ropes flew through the air, ensnaring the mock steer's horns and legs in a textbook catch that earned them a respectable position among the participants. Flushed with success, they moved on to the highlight of the rodeo, the bull riding competition. Jeff, ever the thrill-seeker, was first to volunteer, his eyes gleaming with excitement. The bull, named Diablo, was known for its unpredictable nature, which only seemed to increase Jeff's enthusiasm. "Don't worry, Arthur. I've got a good feeling about this," Jeff exclaimed, mounting Diablo with an air of a seasoned pro. As the gate opened, Diablo burst forth, bucking wildly in an attempt to dislodge its unusual rider. Jeff, clinging for dear life, managed to stay atop longer than anyone expected. His ride was a chaotic blend of skill, luck, and sheer demonic determination. When Jeff finally tumbled off, landing in the dust with a thud but still smiling, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. They had never seen anything quite like it. As he rose, dusting himself off, Jeff waved cheerfully at the onlookers, completely unfazed. Arthur's turn, however, was more subdued. Opting for a less ferocious bull, he managed a respectable few seconds before dismounting voluntarily, much to the relief of both himself and the spectators who had grown fond of the unlikely duo. As the day ended and the sun dipped below the horizon, the rodeo concluded with a lively dance. Jeff and Arthur, now local celebrities, were pulled into a series of line dances, their laughter mingling with the music. "Arthur, I think I might have been a cowboy in a past life," Jeff joked as they twirled around the dance floor. "And I'm just happy to survive being your sidekick in this one," Arthur replied with a grin. Their Texas adventure had been filled with laughter, mishaps, and unexpected triumphs, binding them even closer as friends. As they left the rodeo, the stars twinkling above them and the echoes of country music fading into the night, they knew these memories would last a lifetime, a testament to their wild and whimsical journey into the heart of cowboy culture.